Well, everyone with any interest in motorsport at all wants to race at Bathurst, at Mount Panorama. They call it Nighto. It certainly is. It's the most magnificent racetrack anyone will ever drive at. I've driven at most circuits around Australia, and there's certainly nothing in this country that will match it. First race was in 1967 at Amaroo Park Raceway, just outside of the outskirts of Sydney. I drove an Austin Healey Sprite sports car. I remember that so well because my parents didn't really know I was racing. They thought I was going into motor carno, and they'd signed off on their parents' consent. I got home and agreed with the news that had been watching me during the day on the television.
When he was driving the team leader sort of thing, take over, and Brian always seemed to be quicker in the car, and it always seemed to be a problem as far as he was concerned. And Brian would get in the car and he said it was fine.
1984, I was driving with Tony Mulvihill in his Mazda RX-7. We went in the Australian Endurance Championship, and coming into Bathurst for the fourth round, the 1000, I was in third place, only behind Alan Moffat and the late Greg Hansford. They were also in RX-7 Mazdas. The likes of Jimmy Richards, Larry Perkins, Peter Brock, Dick Johnson, they were all behind me. That made me feel very proud.
We come in second in our class at that event. That was behind Alan Moffat. So, and that speaks volume for how good a driver Brian Nightingale is.
Another highlight was the last two race meetings. I raced at Oran Park in the Commodore Classic Series. All Commodores all supposed to be even and standard, and there's some pretty good drivers involved in that series, and I ended up in the top 5 at all the races I competed in there. And I think one of the best things about it was I had a guy by the name of Leo Gagan as our team manager, and as a youngster, Leo was always a hero to me. He was a magnificent driver. An embarrassing moment would have to be when I put the RX-7 into the sand at Hell Corner. Went in too deep one lap and straight into the sand, stayed there for 6 or 7 laps. I hopped out of the car and slammed the door, kicked the ground like a spoilt brat, just kept carrying on for quite some time, unaware the international television was on me the whole time. They're still using it on Channel 7 now in some of their lead up to motor racing. So the problem about that is that they all remember me slamming the door and spitting the dummy out, but no one really remembers where I was coming in the championship. That's the hurtful part. At the end of 1984, when I'd done so well in the Endurance Championship that year, I was really stoked and had a few opportunities to drive other cars the following year. But then I got a coal sore on my eyeball, of all things, and I had to have an eye patch on for 9 months, so obviously I couldn't race through 1985 for that reason. But then that devastated me because I was going so well the year before. It looked like I had the world at my feet. But as I say in motorsport, you go from hero to zero overnight, and that was the case with me. But 86, I was ready to race again, and I passed my medical that year, and I raced in the Bathurst 1000, one of Bob Holden's teams, in a Toyota Sprinter. Now that was okay. Then came back for the following year, my eye had worsened a little. I couldn't quite pass the medical, the eye test.
He had to stop doing everything he loved. He basically went downhill for quite a while because he couldn't do what he wanted to do.
But then to be told I couldn't race again, that really devastated me. I was absolutely gutted, and I don't think I ever really got over it, to be honest. The awards I received because of motorsport was Bathurst Citizen of the Year nomination one year. In 1984, I was a finalist in the Bathurst Sports Person of the Year. Well, the only person in Bathurst ever had received an award from CAMS, the Confederation of Australian Motorsport, the governing body of the sport. It's a thing that if people do a lot of work for the sport, they do receive it, and CAMS have it in their honour roll. Also in CAMS, I was the first rally driver outside of Sydney to be recognised by CAMS. They started a grading system. I'm a life member of the Bathurst Car Club. I got that in 1975, I think. I've been a life member since '75 of the Light Car Club. That's one of the oldest car clubs in Australia, the Bathurst Car Club. It was established in 1953. I was the president of the car club one year. I was on the committee for many, many years. Publicity also, other jobs I had up there, so it's always been a part of my life as well.
It gets very in pit lane. during a race.
Damn sight more dangerous than racing the car, I promise you, mate. I had so many close escapes, 2 or 3 times. I remember pit crew members grabbed me by the arm and dragged me back behind the pit garage before a car ran over the top of me. A bloke who I really formed a close association with was Peter Brock. We ended up being very good friends and racing against him. And we had some incredible interviews, really were. He was the greatest person in the world to interview. You only had to ask him one question, you'd go for 10 minutes. Neil Crompton. Neil co-drove this RX-7 we're standing next to now to win one of the Bathurst 12-hour races in the early ones. He co-drove with the late Greg Hansford, and Neil is brilliant. He was a guy that was involved in the media before he started his racing, and he's such a good speaker, and he knows the motorsport so good. To help my own motorsport, I started doing media stuff with the Western Advocate, writing a weekly column called What's On in Motorsport. That would have been in the 70s. Also in the 70s I started doing a bit of work on 2BS, both voluntary, and the reason I did it voluntary was because looking for sponsors, I found it much easier to get a sponsor when I was involved with the media because they knew they could get some sort of return back then, whereas other people couldn't really promise them, that sort of return. So that's why I did it for nothing as long as I did. Later on, I then got involved in the media side of it, and that now is a good second. But I know I'd rather be there. I'd still rather be sitting my big backside behind the wheel of a race car. I promise you that. I only ever was a goalkeeper. I think the whole time I played soccer, I only had one game out on the field, and then I made a fool of myself. To my mind now, that's the most dangerous sport in the world is cricket. My God, how them blokes are standing there with their little red balls flying and beyond me, I just couldn't do it.